Take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So Trump gave an address to Congress tonight. I believe it's called address to the joint Congress or joint address to Congress. I don't know. It's not a State of the Union, but he did a speech with both chambers of Congress in attendance. And it was mostly normal Trump stuff. They've got some sort of new hits that they play now. So not entirely a broken record when it comes to Trump, but for the most part, it's the same thing. If you're somebody like me who's been listening to Trump speak, unfortunately, for many years at this point, it's mostly the same. Now it's a lot of focus on, this Doge and supposed fraud. Donald Trump spent a ton of time listing programs that Doge supposedly cut or found that they don't want paid for, some of which were just completely made up or exaggerated, or Trump just kind of misrepresented what these programs are for, or just never mentioned what these programs are for at all. But that was kind of the biggest accomplishment, bragging rights kind of thing that he touted. He also reiterated his commitment to these tariffs, saying that everything on the world stage is so unfair and that all these countries have to pay their fair share. And he doesn't seem to recognize that these things, whether it's USAID or the different trade agreements we have with different nations, these are part of the reason America is so powerful. He seems to think that by cutting ourselves off from dependence and these type of relationships, that it'll bring more wealth to America somehow. I don't know. We'll see. Things are probably going to get pretty gnarly pretty fast with these tariffs. It's entirely possible that he's going to reverse course and hand the opposition their first win in terms of being able to attack the Trump administration, because if these tariffs are as spectacular of a failure as they threaten to be, it's going to be impossible for Donald Trump to wiggle away from that or blame it on something else. I mean, it is Donald Trump, so he's wiggled away from pretty much everything else at this point. But, if as soon as he puts these tariffs in, it tanks the economy and affects people like steel workers, farmers, blue-collar workers across the country, that's going to become apparent pretty fast, and everybody knows Trump is doing this with the tariffs. It's not like it's under the radar. So before all that happens, this was Trump's chance to seem triumphant and powerful and strong and blah, blah, blah. And again, I think that is probably going to fade. That veneer is going to collapse fast because of how bad his economic policy is. A lot of people thought, oh, these tariffs are just a bluff, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's in black and white now. And now he's talking about more tariffs on the rest of the world. So it seems like this is happening. And there's a couple things that happened throughout the course of this speech in terms of resistance to Trump. Throughout the course of the speech and after the speech, Democrats gave their response speech in actually a couple different ways. So I want to cover that because there's a decent amount of examples here of what the resistance to Trump looks like. None of it seems to be working particularly well, but I guess the question is, which of these strategies, if sustained, will yield the biggest victories against Trump in the future, whether it's from Democrats or people who oppose Democrats. So the main thing that happened, the main headlines, and I would say, as for this night, the most successful attempt at any kind of resistance was from Al Green, who stood up during Trump's speech. I believe he's a congressman, a Democratic congressman, and he stood up and was waving his cane while Trump spoke, and he was doing this in response to Trump saying that he has a mandate. Trump said, "I have an incredible mandate," and he started talking about the election results, and that was where you started early on in the speech. You started seeing some pushback from Democrats, where they, started making noise, started booing. The whole time there was this obnoxious, raucous applause from the GOP. I mean, it really is crazy how sycophantic all of them are. And what's crazy to me is that there's so many people, when he's talking about tariffs and all that, there's so many of these Republicans that know how bad these tariffs are. They know how bad the policy is, and they're still just there clapping along and glazing Trump as hard as possible. And so you had a lot of raucous applause from them on one side of the aisle. The other side of the aisle was mostly quiet. They were mostly sitting down. But at a few parts, they started booing and getting a little bit rowdy. And in those moments, it genuinely threw off Trump's speech. It genuinely disrupted him. And when Al Green stood up and started yelling at Trump, not only were other Democrats joining in and booing with him, and it caused a disturbance. And then the GOP was booing as well, and they were chanting USA, 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 and Al Green was still standing there. And so it got to the point where, because Al Green was standing up, and I think also because he was speaking, but I think just him standing and waving his cane was enough that he broke quorum, supposedly. And so Speaker Mike Johnson started warning him, if you don't obey, if you don't sit down, then you'll be expelled, etc. And he didn't. He stayed standing, he stayed waving his cane, and he continued insisting that Donald Trump does not have a mandate, as Donald Trump tried to continue speaking. And so eventually, Speaker Mike Johnson called for the authorities in the room, I forget what their title is, to come and remove Al Green. And he went peacefully. That was the only thing that I could say on his part, is he should have made them literally drag him out. Because you already got there. You already got to the point where the camera's on you. So you successfully disrupted this. You caused Donald Trump to stop speaking. He had to turn around and wait for Mike Johnson to call for you to be removed. So at that point, just fucking lay down on the ground. You know what I mean? Like, that, in my opinion, is when you should make the biggest ruckus that you can, because he had the moment there. And obviously, my criticism of Democrats is that every single one of them should have done the same thing. If they had one by one continued disrupting the way Al Green did, not all at once, although all at once might be fine, and would be more fun to watch probably. But if one by one they continued disrupting it, that could have successfully dragged things out enough that they would have had to cancel the speech or do something drastic. And so there's just that's what you guys should be aiming at. That's what they should be aiming at. And obviously Democrats don't seem to want to do anything like that. They seem to want to roll over and hope that this all blows over, and hope that they can hide from the consequences of all of this, and maybe by sheer luck of Trump's incompetence, they'll be reelected and swept back into office in 2026 and 2028. And so you have Al Green, making some attempt at resistance. And really, I mean, that's what it looks like. You always can go further, but the very simple act of being disruptive and refusing to stop is the key. That's the core of it all. And these Congress people and senators and whoever, they have way more power to do that than anybody else. And that's pretty much what they have the power to do right now. Hakeem Jeffries and these other lizard people, Democrats, they keep asking us, well, what do you want us to do? We're not in power. They're in power. There's nothing we can do. That's what they can do. They can put themselves in the way of business as usual to try to slow things down. That's what they should be doing. That's what their base wants them to be doing, 100%. The Democratic base does not want them to be going along and playing nice with Republicans at this point. So another thing that they were doing in the crowd, which I think was much less effective, was they had these little signs. They had signs that say, that's a lie, or, I don't know, impeach Musk or things like that. And so they would hold up the sign, and when he said something that was not true or whatever, I don't know, pretty weak. The whole point was that to get the cameras to see that, during the speech. But the camera was never really on them, at least not on the stream that I watched. So it was just kind of stupid and pointless, and it's a way to quote unquote resist without disrupting anything. And that's just not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. So, and then apparently, Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats, the Democrats in leadership, were telling people they should do nothing, that they should be as restrained as possible, not say anything, not do anything. And so that's the other far end of the quote resistance strategies that we see here, is Hakeem Jeffries saying to essentially just sit there and do nothing. So not only do we need more of what we saw from Al Green, but we also need less of Hakeem Jeffries. We need him to be, he should be the one marched out of the building. Because at very least, what the Democrats need to be doing is making room for the members of the Democratic caucus to resist in various ways. Opening the floodgates so that even if Hakeem Jeffries is a coward and Chuck Schumer doesn't want to do anything with his limited power in the Senate to actually cause some resistance, at least allow your members to take the leadership charge when it comes to that. But Democrats don't even want to do that. And so that's where I believe you see the strategy come in of Bernie Sanders versus this other person that the Democrats had do the counter speech to Donald Trump's speech. Her name is Slotkin, Eliza Slotkin or something. And so this lady is the perfect example of the kind of Democrat that people hate. This is like a pro-Zionist CIA corporate Democrat. And, her speech delivered nothing particularly of note. I believe it got 1.4 thousand views as opposed to Bernie's speech, his response speech, I guess that he did on his own volition. But that one racked up a few dozen thousand. Not sure exactly how many, but more. Same dynamic you see with AOC and the leadership in the House, Jerry Connolly and Hakeem Jeffries. They just don't have the same type of pull, man. Whereas like anything that AOC posts about or says gets attention. And the rest of these guys just have no way of reaching the public. And when they do, when they go on TV, they're boring. They're fucking snooze fests. And so nothing that they say gains any traction. But then you have people like AOC and Bernie who actually have real platforms of their own. And so they're able to get messages out of real resistance. So Bernie is pretty much, he seemed to have taken it into his own hands to deliver his own speech. And in that one, you got a very Bernie speech. He's emphasizing inequality. One thing that he did that I thought, falls on deaf ears a little bit is he emphasized the lies that Donald Trump tells, which is great, except it was kind of like this laundry list of lies that aren't that recent. Just the lies that we all know Donald Trump has told, like lies about the previous election and lies about climate change or whatever. It's like all of this has been litigated already. You know what I mean? Even the people that love Trump, they've heard about these specific lies 1,000 times. They don't care. So there's current lies that he's telling. In my opinion, I mean, he's getting better at lying. Before, his lies were just absolutely facetious and ridiculous, whereas now he seems, without talking about all this waste and this fraud, it seems more targeted at an audience, and they're talking more in terms of specifics, which I still don't think any of it's true, but it just seems to be better packaged lying. And so doing fact checks on that, like all of this stuff that he's saying about Social Security, which I think Bernie did mention, talking about how there's 100 and 300-year-olds on Social Security, which is just not true. They're misinterpreting these systems and how they work. And also, even if Social Security was sending a check to somebody who's dead, and they're just sending a check to a mailbox, the money never goes anywhere. You know what I mean? If there's nobody alive to cash the check, then the money never gets cashed. So maybe there's 1 or 2 cases where somebody pulls some kind of scam where they cash Social Security checks for their dead mother or something, but nobody has brought up proof of that happening one time. There's not even like a real accusation that Trump and his administration or Elon or anybody has made about actual fraud. So all of these numbers are just made up. And those are the lies that Donald Trump is telling that are gaining more traction right now. So I think focusing on just like the fact that Donald Trump is a liar, I mean, I think that's a foregone conclusion. But aside from that, from Bernie, he mentioned one thing that he spent a lot of time talking about, as is typical for Bernie, is healthcare, and how Donald Trump didn't say anything about healthcare, and, mentioning that it's a crisis, and that it's, funny that Donald Trump didn't have anything to say about it. And that actually, I think, is a good strategy, because what Bernie is trying to do is make healthcare central to the conversation, to force it to be something that Donald Trump has to address in some way. That's at least the idea, right? To make healthcare something that's so much on the forefront of everybody's mind, that in the ways Donald Trump is addressing immigration and, has to pay lip service to bringing inflation down, even though his policies are doing the opposite, making healthcare a pivotal issue that Donald Trump has to address would be a step in the right direction. The only problem with that is that Donald Trump, proposing or enacting solutions on healthcare is not really something that we want to happen. So, but regardless, Bernie wants to push that to the front of people's minds. I think that's a smart thing to do. I think Bernie's showing his age a little bit. I think he doesn't sound as good as he used to a few years ago. He sounded a little lispy, like his dentures might be falling out or something. Donald Trump has moments like that as well. These guys are fucking old, man. These guys are fucking old. And Bernie is definitely showing his age. He's doing this tour of the swing states and everything to stoke opposition to Trump. And I think that's a good thing for him to keep doing. But like, one way or the other, somebody has to take the torch from this guy, because he's old as fuck. And he's a good communicator, but maybe not as good as he once was. And the last thing I want to mention is that in Serbia, there was recently a disruption in parliament that was led by the opposition party, which is like a group of opposition parties. It's not exactly one, where they threw smoke bombs and basically disrupted this entire session, filled it with smoke, to the point where they actually injured one of the people in this party that they're opposing. It's called the Progressive Party. That's not the full title, but it's something Progressive Party, and the opposition is further left. And these guys, in solidarity with student protesters, who were protesting corruption, and similar to what happened in Greece, they were protesting the collapse of some public infrastructure, which led to people dying. So these sparked protests at universities and amongst labor in general, which have escalated into these sort of standoffs in parliament, where you have opposition parties that are actually trying to disrupt the business of parliament, trying to make a big deal. And they left one of the members of this Progressive Party in critical condition with these smoke bombs, not by directly injuring her, but by filling the environment with smoke. And so, I mean, the images of this disruption of parliament is such a stark contrast from all of these Democrats sitting quietly, dejectedly, while Donald Trump shames them and demeans them. I mean, if we're talking about an opposition party, there is a lot that the Democrats could be doing. And the very least of it is the stand that Al Green took against Trump. So I applaud him for doing that. I think it's great. I think he could have gone further, and I think Democrats should be ashamed of themselves that they didn't all follow suit. Because I mean, the guy laid it out right there. All you had to do was keep doing exactly what he did, and you would have successfully disrupted this speech. And that's not what Democrats want. That's not what they want to do, but it should be what they want to do. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support the channel, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. I'm going to be posting all kinds of exclusive content there, like book reviews, movie reviews, songs, beats, if you like the beats that play in the back of these podcasts, and more. If there's ideas that you have for exclusive content that you'd like to see, let me know and we'll figure some things out.